Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Baggerly and I am the Program Assessment Specialist here at the Department of Education. This is vignette number 2 in the nuts and bolts of interim assessment general topic. I will be discussing the different types of interims available for ELA and literacy, math and science. I will also be reviewing the interim blueprints and the interim summaries that let you know what is on the interims. There is a total of 5 nuts and bolts of interim assessments vignettes. They are all available in the SDE Assessment and Accountability ISAT Comprehensive Assessment System webpage. Each of the vignettes discusses a specific range of subtopics. They are listed in the subtopics columns. Additional resources and websites for each vignette is listed in the Resources Websites column. Okay, let's start a discussion of what is on the interims. First up, let's talk about the ELA literacy and math interims. There is a veritable alphabet soup of interim types available for ELA and math, so we use these Rubik's Cube models to illustrate their differences, and the differences between them are the number of targets each assesses. As you can see, the Interim Comprehensive Assessment, or ICA, assesses the full range of targets, similar to the summative. The Interim Assessment Blocks, or IAB, assess a smaller portion of targets. They assess around 3 to 8 targets. The Focused Interim Assessment Blocks, or FIAB, assess an even smaller slice of target at around 1 to 3 targets. Okay, let's talk about these in more detail. First up is the ICA. The ICA includes 2 parts. The CAT part, which mimics the Computer Adaptive Test portion of the summative, and the PT, or Performance Task part. The PT includes hand-scored items. I'm putting hand-scored in quotes here. Reason being is that our testing vendor, Cambium Assessment, has provided SDE with an AI scoring engine that automatically scores these hand-scored items. However, sometimes the AI scoring engine is not sure about a score on a certain student response, or it has trouble producing a score. In those cases, the educator logs into the reporting system and either verifies the score or assigns the response a score. See our reporting training modules on the ISAT portal for more information on how to verify these scores. All right. So as I mentioned before, the ICA assesses a full range of targets. Therefore, an ICA could be helpful in determining where a new student is at on his learning journey. The ICA can also provide helpful information on student learning after a significant period of instruction. Next up are the IABs. IABs are fixed forms that include about 15 items each. There is also an IAB performance task that includes hand-scored items. The same caveats apply to those hand-scored items. Because the IABs assess a similar slice of targets, they will be useful with checking student understanding at specific points of instruction. They can also help educators determine next steps in a student's learning journey. Then there are FIABs. The FIABs are also fixed forms, and they contain around 10 to 15 items each. Since the FIABs assess such a small slice of targets, around 1 to 3 targets each, they provide a very detailed understanding of student learning. If a student is having a particularly difficult time with a concept, such as multiplying and dividing with 100, an FIAB will provide educators with information on next steps for instruction, formative assessment processes, and/or intervention. Now I want to talk about an interim that was developed exclusively for Idaho educators. That is the SICA, or Shortened Interim Comprehensive Assessment. This interim includes a CAT portion only. To say another way, the SICA does not include a performance task portion that includes those hand-scored items. The SICA measures student mastery of almost all of the targets on a summative assessment. Since there is no PT portion, the SICA offers an assessment that can be administered in less time to gain a pretty complete picture of where a student is at on their learning journey. If the SICA is administered through the TA app, student performance data will be shown in our reporting system. Student performance data will include a scale score and proficiency level. This assessment was developed exclusively for Idaho educators due to the disruptions that occurred to student learning during the 2019-2020 school year. So far, we've only discussed the ELA and math interims, but we also have science interims available this school year. There are 14 elementary, 19 middle school, and 20 high school science interims. Each interim is a fixed form testlet that consists of 1 cluster. If you're not familiar with the concepts of a cluster, don't worry, I'll be talking about them more. Each one of those clusters is aligned to or measures student mastery of 1 3-dimensional science standard. As a reminder, the 3 dimensions are a science and engineering practice, better known as tasks that scientists complete when doing science, a domain or content area, those are physical, life, and earth and space sciences, and a cross-cutting concept, better known as how scientists think when they are doing science. So let's talk a little bit more about clusters. Each cluster starts with a phenomenon, which is a discrete observation of the natural world. It's a statement that should make the student think, I wonder why that is happening. From there, the student is engaged in a grade-appropriate scientific activity via the associated interactions and dictated by the SEP, which will allow them to explain the phenomenon. Additionally, there is a cluster task statement or mission statement at the end of the stimulus that explicitly informs the student of the task they will engage in while answering the cluster. For example, in the following questions, you will develop a model that explains why water droplets form on the outside of a glass when it is outside. Those associated interactions or questions are aligned to the 2 or 3 dimensions of the standard. I know that was a lot, so here's a model to help you better visualize a cluster. So on the left, we start with one Idaho State Science Standard. That standard is comprised of 3 dimensions, an SEP, a domain, and a CCC. From there, an item writer creates a cluster. That cluster consists of a stimulus. In that stimulus is the phenomenon, then additional text, graphics, data tables, graphs, and animations that the student will use and interpret to explain the phenomenon via the associated lettered interactions. As you can see, in this example, there are 4 lettered interactions, and those interactions are either 2 or 3 dimensionally aligned. So how is a cluster manifested onto a test? We'll see. Here is an example of a cluster that appeared on a middle school science sample test. On the left is the stimulus. At the top of the stimulus is the phenomenon. Below that are the graphics, data tables, and text the student will use to explain the phenomenon. On the right, you see the associated interactions. Those engage the student in the grade-appropriate SEP that gives him an opportunity to explain the phenomenon. We've talked a lot about the different types of interims, but how does one determine exactly what is assessed on those interims? Generally speaking, the interim assessment blueprints offer that information. They link the hierarchy of levels within the standards with the range and types of items that appear on the tests. They are pretty detailed documents and can be used by educators and test developers alike to determine what is assessed on a test. Let's go through a few examples. Here's an example of a math IAB blueprint. As you can see, it offers the names of the math IABs offered. Here's a more detailed view of that math IAB blueprint. Here you can see much more detailed information about the targets, depth of knowledge ranges, and the number of items per target. Here is a grade 6 ELA non-PT ICA Claim 3 blueprint. Non-PT is synonymous with the CAT portion of the ICA. Here's the grade 6 and 7 ELA IAB blueprint. Here the blueprint breaks down the number of blocks, their names, and the number of or range of items in each block. So hopefully what you can tell from these screenshots is that the blueprints offer a lot of information, some of which is not so readily apparent unless you drill down and spend some time unpacking all that information. Here at the SDE, we know that an educator's time is very valuable, so we created a resource that educators can use to quickly identify what is on the interims. Here is the grade 3 math interim assessment summary. There is a summary of interims for grades 3 through 8 and high school. Starting all the way on the left, you can see that each of the interims are numbered, so you can quickly determine the total number of interims available for each grade level. Next column over is a clear identification of the type of interim. The summaries always start with the 2 parts of the ICA, then the SICA, then the IABs, and lastly, the FIABs. Next is a description of the targets assessed on each interim. If you need a refresher on the organization of the hierarchy of the claims and targets, be sure to access the Smarter Content Explorer. As we keep moving to the right, the summary also lists the name of the interims as they appear in AVA and the TA app. Access vignette number 3 in the nuts and bolts of interim assessment general topic to find out more about those interim administration apps. Then in the last column is the number of items on each interim. All of this information can be used to help with scheduling when to give these interims during the academic year and approximately how long it should take the students to complete each interim. Keep in mind these are fixed forms, meaning that the same questions will appear each time the student takes a specific interim. There are also summaries of the ELA interims that convey the same information. We can't forget about science. There are also science interim blueprints for each grade band. They list out all the interims available for each grade band, including the 3 dimensions and standard alignment for each science interim. Thank you so much for sticking around until the end of this vignette. If you have any questions, here's our contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again.